there is a weird feeling to learn from someone while simultaneously mourning them. And I think that is a very major sensation. It's like if your father died and he left you a video of how to shave, you know.
Yes. Yes.
So it's like
Yeah.
heavy duty thing,
Yeah.
you know.
That's I mean that's just life. That's the you're dancing on that razor's edge of constant grief and joy because when
No,
you
no
have when
pun
you have
intended.
right right like you're talking about kids earlier. There's things of like and talking about the fear of losing them. You're like always celebrating the biggest joy of life and also mourning that yourself. You're not you're
Right.
finite. Your kids are finite. You have to just accept that, and you're balancing those two things all the time, and it's tough. And
Yeah,
of course,
David Foster Wallace on Incarnations of a Burning Child. He said, if you've never had your heart broken and want to have a child, and I've had this terrible thing. I mean, I don't even like to admit it because I don't mean it in a mean way, but sometimes I'm like, I wish I never did that
Mhm.
because because I'm afraid of her choking on a little piece of chicken that I first let her
Right,
have. I'm afraid of her dying in a car crash at 13. I'm
right,
afraid of her getting assaulted at 18. I'm afraid of her getting having a bad divorce at 25. I'm
hmm
afraid of her getting, you know, tongue cancer at 44. I'm afraid of her dying,
I would say,
and
yeah,
and I will
I know,
never be okay.
I know those feelings, but I would say the risks of life are obviously outweigh the non-life, right? And there's no way to
Yeah,
avoid
well,
it.
they do, yeah. What's the greatest? I think that's where I really believe in God.
Hmm
God is like the ultimate paradox, where he's like, yeah, you can make nothing and nothing will be there, or you can make something and something will die,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
you're like, whoa, what do I do? What do I choose?
You gotta choose life, and you gotta, and unfortunately, risk is just a part of it. And
Yeah,
you have to somehow mitigate all of that while trying to be a parent, and deal with all of the absurd hauntings of your life. Because we're all just here after learning, whatever mistakes we've made over the past 30 or some odd years, however old we are, and we wouldn't be who we are without the problems we all faced, whether it was when you were 13 in probation or, last year or whatever age you were. And unfortunately, that's a hard thing for me to think of too, with kids learning mistakes like that. But it's part of life. It's crazy.
yeah. It really is. I have a lot of friends. I mean, most of my friends are parents, including you.
Hmm
And I'm the dad at the park. If she falls, I sprint to pick her up. But then I see these other like mothers like just let them fall,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
And I've talked to a lot of people like that. They're not they're people now. Now they're potential parents. It's like
Yeah.
you've given them to chance. You've given them to God. You've made them be like children makers. They're
it's a
not yours
tough
anymore.
it's a tough
It's
dance.
hard.
It's a tough
It
dance is
really
my yeah
it really
because
is.
they got to learn from their mistakes, but you also know they
Yeah.
have to avoid certain things because they're still young. And some of those parents who let the kids fall, I'm like, that must be their third or fourth kid, because they've learned.
Yeah, I think I've heard that too. They're like, yeah, the fourth kid, like they could be like 5 years old. You just like throw them in the ocean. You're like, I don't know, whatever. They're
Goodbye.
fine.
Yeah,
Like,
my
I think
father
you
is the
just get kind
youngest.
of numb to it.
My father's the youngest of nine.
Wow.
But we should probably go to another caller.
Yeah, let's do that.
Christopher, don't go anywhere. We're going to continue this,
Yeah.
and hopefully you can decipher this next caller.
Yeah.
Who do we
Let's
have?
see.
Do we
We
know?
got yes, yes, yes. We have JD coming in. JD, are you with us?
What's up?
Hey, how's it going?
It's good. How are you?
Not bad, not bad. I'm a big fan.
Thank you. Thanks for calling in.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, some weird stuff going on today. I happen to be a huge fan of the Beach Boys myself.
Mhm.
They're the best. They're my number one.
Yeah, my favorite song being Surfin' Safari, and this story I'm going to tell is in fact about a safari. So I guess I'll just jump into it.
Great. Let's do it.
So I've shared this story with many people, and there's people who can corroborate it. A little backstory first about me. just for context, is I lived in Kenya for 4 years, from the age of 14 until my 18th birthday when I graduated high school from there. And the reason why I went over there is a completely different story. It's another interesting tale, but side note, I was legally exiled from the United States until my 18th birthday. But we'll get into it another time sometime.
Okay,
Perhaps.
that's a big bomb to drop. But let's get to the events after the exile.
Yeah, so there was American teen in the throes of culture shock, and I was
Okay.
living with my Kenyan step-grandparents at the time in the highlands of the Great Rift Valley. So I attended a boarding school for missionary kids as a day student and quickly made friends with other teens whose parents were staffing the school. And these families, they stayed at the school year-round, even when the school was on break, so I always had someone to chum with during the off-season. One of the preferred pastimes of the station kids, as they were called, was riding dirt bikes. And it wasn't long until one of these missionary families took pity on me, having to walk to and from school each morning and night, which was about 10 miles, to the tiny off-grid cottage up on the mountainside, and allowed me to borrow one of their extra dirt bikes. So this afforded me other opportunities to join the other boys who had regularly ventured down into the valley on excursions to chase the wildlife and explore lava tubes of dormant volcanoes. And one such occasion, we had planned to go further than we ever had before. We rode down from the highlands with jerry cans of fuel strapped to the sides of our luggage racks, and deep into the Maasai land, which is the tribe of that area. We stopped along the way at some of the villages, and we were talking with some of the Maasai warriors there. They were joking with us. They sat on our motorcycles, and we held their spears. We talked with the elders there, and they had no concerns initially about us crossing their territory, with the exception of us continuing in one particular direction. They had cautioned us about traveling any further to the southwest of that area. And no specific danger was mentioned, only that we were free to go wherever we pleased, but we should avoid that area. So, being reckless teens and knowing that direction was the most remote, we decided to do exactly that and throw caution to the wind, headed in the direction we were warned not to travel in. So we've been riding hard for a good while, and the land was pretty rugged. There was no trails present. We forged on through really dense bush, and jumping over warthog burrows that were appearing suddenly, and the obstacles were becoming more challenging. I was focusing pretty intensely on not somersaulting over my handlebars when I almost crashed into the back of my buddy's bike, not realizing that he had stopped. So I flipped the kill switch on my bike and lifted off my goggles, and I called over to my buddy, who was already off of his bike and standing a few yards away, and he motioned me to come over and check something out. And I walked over to him as our other friend circled back, realizing that we had stopped. And there was a circle of white stones in a small clearing, very similar to a fire pit, about a yard in diameter. And in the middle of the circle was a severed head of a goat and all four hooves. Now, we were pretty freaked out, but there was no sign of like slaughter in the immediate area. No other parts of the animal were nearby. No blood trail. Just the head and the hooves.
Did it look fresh or like it had been there for a while?
Yeah, it was really hard to tell. We looked, we kind of looked around to see if, this was sort of some weird result of, a recent kill or something like that. Because, mind you, we were riding where there were lions and hyenas and all sorts of other wildlife out there.
Right.
So my other friend pulled up, and got off his bike. And he was like, whoa, what the hell is this? And, we all shrugged and looked around and trying to figure out what was going on. And when I tell you there was nobody around, I mean, there was no possible way for anybody to hide. You could see straight across the plains for miles in every direction. And then out of nowhere, like seemingly out of thin air, a man just walks right up to us as if he was just standing, a few feet away from us. And my one friend was even, he was so startled. I vividly remember him exclaiming like, oh shit, and jump back. You know, it was like a jump scare
Right,
from a
right.
horror movie.
Did he look a
Uh,
certain way? Was he dressed a certain way?
so yeah, he was. He had a very unassuming appearance. He wore a Maasai plaid blanket, which is pretty common. He had beaded jewelry on his wrists, and he had sandals made out of tire treads. He was probably about 6 feet tall, bald. But the one thing I'll remember about him is his age was very indeterminable. I mean, he could have been anywhere from 40 to 65 years old. Like, I could not tell.
Right. Interesting. Did
But
he have
he,
a facial expression? Is there any type of emotion to his face?
yeah, he was smiling. He was,
Okay.
very disarming.
Okay.
He didn't walk over with a scowl or anything, and he greeted me very, in a friendly way. He
Right.
said, "Habari za leo, wazungu," which is like, "How are you, white guys?" So I was the only one who spoke Swahili amongst my friends. So I said, "Hey, we stopped because we're looking at this circle, trying to figure out what it is." And he explained to me in a very matter-of-fact way that he had built the circle and he placed the goat parts there in order to bring rain due to a month-long drought in the area. So I was pretty confused by this as I was translating for my friends. And at this point in my life, I did not acknowledge the existence of supernatural. I didn't believe in God, the devil, especially, magic African witch doctors or anything like that.
Right.
So I was very, very dismissive. This seemed like a bunch of superstitious nonsense to me at the time. But he changed the subject and he began to address me as a specific name. He called me Leleito, which at the time I had no idea what that meant, but in retrospect, I've been able to research this a little bit, especially in preparing this to tell this story for you. And I found out that in the Maasai, Leleito is a name, and they often name each other based on, the time of day or whether you're born at night or whether you're born during a drought, something like that. And Leleito means born during a thunderstorm or rain bringer, uh, which I would also learn during the research of my own story that I was in fact born during one of the most sudden and severe thunderstorms in the history of Chicago, which was also preceded by a long drought. Um, so you'll get the relevance of me bringing this up a little bit later here, but at this point, I had not asked for his name, so it occurred to me to ask him for his name. And he gave me a very cryptic response and said that he had many names. He started to list animals. He said he was an owl, a jackal, a snake, and sometimes a bat when he slept. So this was, he might have said he was other animals as well. I don't particularly recall. Later on, I would find out that Africans don't really like certain animals because of the connotation they have with witchcraft, specifically owls. They think that witch doctors astral project into owls and watch people in the night. But he started assigning animals to us at that point. He pointed to my one friend first and called him a hyena. And I translated that to my friend, and he instinctively and appropriately began to laugh like a hyena. It was pretty bizarre, but
Are you feeling at ease in this conversation, or is there fear?
yeah, I'm at ease. It's just telling the story. I've told it to many people, but telling it in such detail kind of takes you back to it a little bit. So it's just kind of gives you the heebie-jeebies, so to speak, because it
Yeah.
was something that really happened to me. But
So he's assigning names or animals to you guys.
yeah, and he also sort of started describing our spirits, or I guess you could say auras. He said that same friend had a blue spirit, and my next friend, he said he was a bird and that he had a green aura. I remember feeling like weirdly jealous because green was my favorite color. So he addressed me as that name again, Lelito, and said that I was a lion, specifically a thunder cat. And I was at the time I was like, okay, that sounds pretty cool. I was a teenager. he said I had a mane of lightning, and my aura was like golden color, uh, which I thought was pretty cool. At the time, I was like,
Yeah,
well,
like,
that's
I'll take it.
golden. Yeah, I'll take it. Yeah, I'll allow it. But I had taken a novel interest in the conversation at this point, and my friends were losing interest because they didn't understand what we were talking about. We were speaking in Swahili, uh, and this is when he began to speak to me about my past. Started describing some of my childhood experiences, even some things that I'd never shared with anyone ever before. So it took a bizarre turn at that point, and he talked to me about my future and my destiny. Uh, I remember him telling me something that's stuck with me, that I was fatherless and always would remain so, which was,
Wow.
true of my childhood. My father left at a very young age, and
Wow.
you know, so and then even as a grown man, like I started developing a relationship with my father-in-law, and he also left the picture, right? So
Wow.
just a very interesting kind of
He had an
prophecy, if
insight.
you will.
Yeah, he had an insight into you.
Right. So he told me a lot of facts about my life, even predicting the birth of my first child being a son. Which I guess 50% chance, right? But um,
Still, he tried.
yeah, I didn't understand everything he was telling me at the time, but I can just say, like, over the course of my life, some of his statements have returned to me during some unexplainable circumstances and seem to fit really perfectly into place.
Wow.
So my friends were getting pretty restless at that point and wanted to move on with our journey, and were pestering me to kind of cut our conversation short. And uh, I told him I had to go, and shook his hand, and he thanked me. Specifically, he thanked me for bringing the rain. Where at which point I awkwardly kind of laughed and replied, "You're welcome." I didn't know that that was when the probably the most bizarre aspect of this story was about to unfold. So as we regrouped, we collectively agreed we needed to head back, and we had several hours of riding ahead of us to get back to the school. And I looked back over my shoulder to see where the man had gone, and wouldn't you know it, just as mysteriously as he had appeared, he was gone. And without exaggeration, again, there was nowhere to slip away to. There's no way that he could have just like ducked behind a rock or a tree or something like that. So we get on our bikes, and as we start riding, I start to feel droplets hitting my arms. And I don't know if you've ever been on a motorcycle in the rain.
I haven't.
It feels like needles if you're like driving at high speed.
Right, right, right.
So the drops began to increase in frequency, and they quickly gave way to like a deluge of hard rain. And the craziest thing about this was there was not a single cloud in the sky. The sky was not darkened. There was no clouds. There was just, I mean, torrential downpour out of a clear blue sky.
Wow.
There was,
Wow.
thunder cracking around us.
Awesome.
The
So-
rain was like blinding us.
Blue sky, crazy rain.
Crazy rain, like something I've never seen before. Haven't seen anything like it since.
And you're looking all around you. You're looking all around you. No clouds, but rain
Right.
coming from somewhere.
Yeah, and I mean, at that point, we even had to stop our bikes. It was that extreme that we couldn't even
Right.
continue to ride. And then the storm just suddenly, I mean, the rain just halted like on a dime. The only proof of that phenomenon occurring was the fact that our clothes were still like soaked.
Right, right.
So we
That's
get back to the
crazy.
school, and one of my friends had told their parents of what had transpired, and they were really disturbed by it. And it was pretty evident to them that we had encountered a witch doctor, and they forbid us obviously from ever going back to that place again. But to this day, I've researched scientific explanations or other weather marvels. There's really no description of historical events that I've found that seem to match my experience. But maybe it really was magic. And the fact that the man with the tire sandals said he was trying to summon rain, and that he in fact ran into me, calling me the rain bringer. I don't know who he or what he was praying to or sacrificing to or for, but he spoke unknowable things to me, and some of those specific events have happened in my life.
It sounds
Just
like
like the rain.
it sounds like you were part of his ritual and didn't even know about it. He was waiting. He was waiting for the what was it? Thundercat?
Yeah.
Thundercat.
Yeah, right. And so that's my story. I just wanted to share it with you and the
Great.
viewers here.
It's
And
great.
Thanks for sharing.
I love the image of a total blue sky and a horrible rain happening. You said, and this is in Kenya, you said?
right, yeah, and I'm not a psychic or a demon hunter or anything. I'm just a normal guy.